Hi, my name is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Uh, I am the director of the Trauma Center here in Boston and the author of the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which seems to be the best-selling book in the area of post-traumatic stress. I'm very honored to speak to you in Bermuda today. What's so encouraging to me is that you are a small country, and so you can identify problem cases maybe more precisely than we do in the United States. And I've looked over the figures of your poverty rates and other socioeconomic indicators in the Bermuda. It really looks like to me that if you pay attention to the issue of adverse childhood experiences, that you can really have a major impact because of the relatively small scope of the society that you live in. So what we have learned over the past 20 years or so is that early childhood adverse experiences, meaning abuse, neglect, having very inconsistent parents, parents who yell at you, scream at you, hit you, who have domestic violence, having these experiences leaves children with a central nervous system and with bodies that get stuck in being worried about getting hit, getting hurt, and their brain gets sort of rewired to experience the world as a very dangerous place. When children are exposed to these very adverse conditions and cannot feel safe with their parents or in their school systems or somewhere else, then their bodies get wired to be prepared to be hit, to be neglected, to be abandoned, etc., etc. And these become long-term biological effects that have an effect on how the immune system works, how their attention and concentration works. And let me just explain that. If you're ready to be assaulted or hurt in other ways, your brain gets focused on where the threat is. You become hyper alert to what's going on, but you cannot pay attention to play and exploration and friendship and just having a good time because you're always under alert for danger. The other thing that happens when you're exposed to scary things on the hands of your caregiver is that you feel overwhelmed with feelings of wanting to be taken care of, wanting to be looked at, wanting to be made safe. You cannot find it, and then you learn to numb yourself down. You learn to not feel anything, to just have that stiff upper lip, and to suppress any feelings in your body. That may be very helpful to let you to pretend functioning, but underneath it all, your body continues to react this way, and the body does express itself then in terms of increased incidence of arthritis, increased incidence of any number of diseases, and also people try to stuff their feelings by increased drinking, increased drug taking. There's a huge correlation between drug abuse and child abuse, and children who grow up in very terrifying circumstances just try to take care of these feelings inside of themselves that they cannot take care of them by themselves. So it has a major impact on relationships. If you have grown up with the expectation that things that you'll get hurt or hit, it's very hard to open yourself up to other people, to feel safe with other people. And that really sets the stage of your relationships with other people being marked by withdrawal, violence, and an inability to just be there for each other. So what can we do about it? There's a such thing as an intergenerational transmission of trauma. That we now know how that's carried by the genes, but we don't need the genetic information to know how, when you have a parent who is chronically upset, how that becomes part of your internal system and how you sort of take that in and your own biology get changed. So we now have very accurate ways of measuring that, but we also see it clinically all the time. So in terms of intervention, the thing to do, what is very clear is that the single most helpful intervention we can give to people is to help young parents take care of their children. And that That means really giving them every opportunity to get help, to get support, to get babysitting, to get ways of calming themselves down. Because if the parents are able to regulate their own arousal system and their own capacity for mutuality, of being there for each other and tolerating each other, then the kids benefit and the kids become calmer also. And so early intervention, helping parents in a very concrete way, how to rock a baby, how to play with a baby, how to turn off the television and to pay attention to each other, to say to each other, how was your day? Very important to do simple things like having family meals, cooking together, eating together, and saying, how was your day? And learning to talk to each other. There's all kind of research that shows how reading to your children, playing with your children, paying attention to your children, pays off in a major way in terms of their being able to calm themselves down, their being able to feel safe, etc. Now, psychologists tend to get a little bit into talking and explaining and understanding. That is also important, but what's even more important is to feel attuned to other people, to feel that people are seeing you, that people know you. And so it's critical in classrooms and mental health centers and health centers that people actually know the name of this kid that you're working with, ask them what's going on with them, talk to them, be there for them, talk about what's going on, explain to them what's happening, and take them in, make them partners in everything. The issue of trauma is very much that nobody really pays attention to you because people are too upset, too crazy, too freaked out, too worried to actually pay attention to you. So the very personal attention is critical. So if kids don't get that, their own bodies keep revolting, and you guys are going to talk particularly about physical effects, which mainly expresses itself in immunological issues, in terms of pain issues, in terms of addiction issues. But what's also important to know is that if your mind is preoccupied with danger, it is very hard to learn. And maybe that's the most important effect of being exposed to childhood violence, is that it's very hard to concentrate, to pay attention. And it's also interesting, for example, that a very large number of kids who have been abused and neglected meet diagnostic criteria for ADHD. Now, what's ADHD? It's just that you see on the surface that kids are restless, they can't sit still, they cannot pay attention. And the etiology of that is oftentimes that they are being abused, neglected, and abandoned at home. And so their central nervous system cannot focus and to concentrate. And so you see this very much in the classroom of kids who become behavioral problems, who then tend to get punished for what they're doing. And in fact, what really needs to be done with these kids is to find a sort of rhythm that allows them to feel safe, to feel calm. So just talking about what's happening may be important, but what's equally important is to really be there and to do what we are meant to do as creatures, namely to be in sync with each other. How do you get in sync with each other? It's not fancy mental health stuff. It's what kindergarten teachers know so well, how to be in sync with young children. That means you do rhythmical activities. You sing together. You move together. And one of the best predictors of long-term mental and physical health is kids who engage in sports activities with other kids, learning how to pass a basketball to each other, learning how to play team sports where you work together on making things happen that give you a sense of pleasure, of being in sync with other human beings. And trauma is all about being out of sync. You want something and somebody starts yelling at you, or you want to be quiet and you hear a commotion that makes you really scared. And so trauma is very much about being out of sync with each other. And so treatment is very much about getting in sync, getting the rhythm together, breathing together, moving together, play, movement, activities that give people a sense of pleasure and a sense of being seen and being known, and a sense of predictability, that there are clear rules to the game, that if you do that, it has certain consequences. A very important part of trauma is that you don't know what's going to happen. So I have to go back to neuroscience. And what we know is that the brain is basically a predictive organ. The way that the brain is formed is it allows you to predict what will happen next. And so the brain gets formed on the basis of experiences. So if you grow up in a loving, predictable, well-organized household, you get a sense of continuity and a sense of what will happen next. If you grow up in an environment that's unpredictable, where people are drunk from time to time and involved in drugs and dramatic suicide attempts and things like that, you are always worried that something else is going to happen, and your brain becomes an organ that very much tells you, let's see where the danger is, see how I'm going to get hurt. And our job as professionals is to reform that brain to help kids to become calm and safe. So what are some of the other things that we can do? We can do yoga with kids together. We can make music together. Anything you can do together with other people gives you a sense of pleasure and belonging. And pleasure and belonging is the opposite of trauma. Let me just consult. You guys had some other questions that you wanted to ask. But the long-term impact, of course, is very profound. Yeah, it's a very important point, is that early adverse experiences are likely to produce a lot of adverse effects. The positive part of it is that if you don't know how to rely on your parents or people who are around you, some traumatized people become extraordinarily creative and inventive. And what we oftentimes see going together is that a person, a traumatized kid, or a traumatized kid as they grow up, develop extraordinary capacities for survival. So they may be very good in a sport or in mathematics or in languages. And people will think, oh, what a creative person this is, because they have developed these extraordinary capacities as islands of safety. But even though they may be extraordinarily talented and do extraordinary things, that doesn't mean that their bodies don't continue to react to the environment as if they're about to get hurt and in danger. So even though you may do things that make you look very good to other people, your body may carry the scars of the abuse and neglect, and your body may continue to fight unseen enemies. And that's why we need to work with bodily safety. And we do that with massages, we do that with yoga, we do it with martial arts sometimes, where you learn how to move your body in a way that gives you a sense of power and competence. So there's many ways in which you can actually overcome and undo the trauma, most of all by making the body feel safe. And the other thing is to very much engage people in their own lives and explain things to people, how things work, ask people how they feel about it, how they would like to do it, because abuse and neglect means that people don't care about your opinion and what's going on with you. And so the critical thing for medical professionals is to really enlist the cooperation and the synchrony of your child and adult patients, and to really find languages for yourself to explain what's going on with you. Part of what happens when you're abused or neglected is that nobody talks to you about how you're feeling. And so you need to stuff your feelings. In healthy families, people talk to each other, and they talk to each other when they're upset or angry or disturbed about something, and you have language for yourself. So traumatized people oftentimes don't have much of a language for their internal world. So it's very important to make that connection with them, so you can really say, what do you think is going on with you? This is what we're going to do, to explain in a mutual way of enlisting them in their own care very much, and to think together about how they can be helped to feel safe and to feel like they have some agency in their own lives. So I wish I could be there. I'd be very curious what you guys are going to be saying to each other, what sort of programs you develop. One of the nice things about doing this work is that we always run into very creative and very dedicated people who often have very good in inventing ways of helping both traumatized adults and traumatized kids to feel calm and to feel safe and to have a sense of agency. In my book, I write about a whole variety of different techniques that you can use to do so. But what I'm impressed with is that I continuously meet people who work with these populations who already are extremely good. For example, I like to spend time with theater people. And I know a variety of people who work with theater in prisons and other traumatized people, where they can help people to come into a role, let's say, of a king with dignity, or they play a role that is different from the role they ordinarily play. And that way they can embody another identity, another entity than their natural self, which may feel I'm always out of control, I'm always superfluous. And when you do these theater programs, you can play a role where you can feel what it feels like to be an important member of the group and to be able to speak about yourself and to talk from inside. And so there's no prescriptions at this point. It's very important to be creative in your thinking about what can you best do to help people to feel calm and in charge of themselves, also of their own bodies, and to feel safe and to live in a predictable world. So I wish you very good luck with your conference, and I look forward to hearing how it all worked out. Thank you very much. Bye.